Florence, the city where the modern world began. The first time I saw this place, I knew my life would never be the same. Yes, I saw a beautiful city filled with some famous art and some stunning medieval architecture, but the history of Florence isn't just seen in the famous sights. It's written all around you. It's painted on the ancient walls, it's etched into every winding cobbled street, and its rich culture lives on in its delicious food, its fabulous art, and in the faces of the vibrant people who take such pride in calling this majestic city their home. Florence was once the very center of the civilized world, and from where I stand, I don't see that much has changed in that regard. So come with me as I show you what to do, where to go, and what to eat in the birthplace of the Renaissance.
Tip number 1, how to get around. When you fly into Florence, you'll be landing at one of two airports, the larger Gallileo International Airport in Pisa or Florence Airport, also known as Peretola. Both airports are serviced by major airlines, but you're more likely to find cheap rates flying into Pisa. If you're flying into Pisa, to get into the city, just hop on the Pisamover to Pisa Centrale rail station, buy a ticket to Florence for about €10, and after an hour train ride through the countryside of Italy, you'll be dropped off at Santa Maria Novella, Florence's main train station right in the heart of town. If you fly into Peretola, the cheapest way to get into the city is by tram that runs directly from Peretola to the city. But given how much closer this airport is to the city than Pisa, I usually just hop in a cab, mostly out of sheer laziness. It takes about 15 minutes to hit the city center and it costs around €25. And if you're coming to Florence from somewhere else in Italy and taking the train, you'll arrive at the same main train station. Now, complicated part over, once you're in the city, how to get around becomes pretty darn simple. You walk. You walk everywhere. This, simply put, is one of the most walkable cities on Earth. You can pretty much get from one end of the historic city center to the other in about 30 minutes, or 2 hours if you constantly stop for gelato. Not that I do that. I do. I really do. Plus, walking around the city lets you discover this town and be delighted by every little thing that is undoubtedly hiding around the corner of the next little street, river walkway, or old market row. Tip number 2, where to stay. So let's be honest, hotels in this city can be a little expensive. You can find some budget options on your typical aggregate sites, but the cheapest and best deals I've found are on condo rental sites like Airbnb. I found an incredibly charming flat on Airbnb right in the heart of town for around $80 a night during peak season in June. A good thing to remember, in the high season during the summer, prices will be higher and it will be hot. During the winter months, prices will be lower and it will be colder. I'm studying to become a meteorologist. As for where in the city to stay, if you want to be close to all the major attractions, stay somewhere in the vicinity of the Duomo or Piazza della Signoria, or for a more local, laid-back vibe, stay across the river in Arno. But really, this city is so compact, stay anywhere in the historic city center and I promise you will not be disappointed. If you are, I guarantee you all the money that you spent to watch this video back. Tip number 3, how to skip the lines. Florence has some of the most incredible sights of any city in Europe, and it's not a secret, so it can get crowded. And lines for the attractions like the Duomo, the David, and the Uffizi Gallery can get downright crazy. So instead of wasting your precious vacation time queuing like you're at Disneyland, the best way to avoid this? Plan ahead. You can book specific entry times that allow you to skip the line for pretty much all the attractions in the city ahead of time, except for the Duomo, which is free and you just kind of have to wait. Now, how to do this was a bit confusing for me the first time I visited, so I've taken the legwork out for you, because I'm such a swell guy. Zero ulterior motive. But if you do all the subscribey stuff to my channel like they always ask in these videos, I'd really appreciate it. Yay! Anyway, I'll include all the relevant links and phone numbers for these places in the description below, but basically the 3 attractions that absolutely require advance tickets are the Accademia Gallery, where the David lives, the Uffizi Gallery, and the climb to the top of the Duomo. The simplest and easiest way to book a time is online. There are third-party websites like florencetickets.com that are very user-friendly and also offer other tours, but you'll pay a bit more of a fee. So I recommend booking ahead directly through Florence's official ticketing website, B-Ticket. For the Duomo climb, you'll need to book a specific time on the Duomo's official website, also linked below. Finally, the last option is to call ahead. You can sometimes get lucky if you're trying to book last-minute tickets. Just call during their business hours, someone who speaks English will answer, and you can ask if they have any last-minute availability. Note, the Accademia Gallery and Uffizi are both closed on Mondays, so the busiest days will be Sundays and Tuesdays. Tip number 4, check out the many little neighborhoods and piazzas of this utterly captivating city. First up, hang out in the Piazza della Signoria, Florence's main square. This is one of my favorite spots in the city. A wide open piazza framed by old buildings, countless Renaissance statues, a replica of the David statue, and the towering Palazzo Vecchio. Despite being very crowded, I probably stroll through this piazza at least once every day I'm in Florence. Next, don't miss the famous Ponte Vecchio. Without a doubt, one of the most interesting bridges in the world. Built in 1345, the bridge is lined with gold and jewelry shops just as it has been since the 1500s. This bridge will be utterly packed by midday, so the best time to see it is right in the morning as the shops open up. Next, right across from the Ponte Vecchio, or any of the bridges really, hit up the ridiculously charming Oltrarno, which means the other side of the Arno River, located, shocker, on the other side of the river. This is one of my absolute do not miss sections of town. It's a super cool, more residential local neighborhood with some great cafes, far fewer crowds, excellent food options, and alluring little winding streets. My favorite bits of the Oltrarno are the San Frediano area and the area right around the Santo Spirito Church. This little square is filled with locals and expats just hanging out, having a beer, eating, and at night the area becomes lively and filled with young people spilling out into the square and sitting on the steps to have a drink with friends. And lastly, make sure to take a stroll along the river and soak in this bewitching city. Tip number 5, where to eat. This one's both easy and difficult. Throw a rock anywhere in Florence and it's bound to end up hitting something incredible to eat. Or a person. It's pretty crowded, I don't recommend throwing rocks. But like anywhere in Italy, the problem isn't finding a great place to eat, it's narrowing down my list of spots to suggest. So as always, here is a smattering of my favorite picks. So if I left off your favorite place, which I'm sure I did, please throw it in the comments below. No rocks, please. My first stop whenever I get to Florence, usually immediately after dropping off my bag at the hotel, sometimes even before, is all'Antico Venaio, near the Uffizi Gallery. The sandwiches here are so good you will want to kiss them as much as eat them. My 2 favorites are the porchetta, succulent, spicy roasted pork, and la favolosa, a sandwich with eggplant tapenade, some sort of sharp, mystical, creamy pecorino spread, and mounds of salty salami. I could eat them every day of my life and it would not be a wasted life. I just might need to invest in a treadmill and some blood thinners. Note, the line for this place can get super long, so the best time to go is right when they open at 10:30 a.m. Next up is Gusta Pizza. This is not just my favorite pizza joint in Florence, it's one of my favorite pizza spots anywhere in Italy. Get it to go, or sit at communal tables with strangers and chow down on pizza that you will be dreaming about long after your Italian trip is over. Another excellent little spot is called Le Volpi e l'Uva. More of a wine bar than a restaurant, it's a great place to sit back, sip some Chianti, and snack on one of their utterly scrumptious crostini. Crostinis? I don't know which is plural. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's as if they made a cured meat that is basically meat butter. Yes, I said meat butter. For lunch, I love Trattoria Mario, a tiny busy place always packed with hungry locals and tourists alike. The pastas here are wonderful and they serve up one of the best Florentine steaks I've had. Dear God, order that beautiful steak. And right next door is Trattoria Za Za. Everything here is incredible and reasonably priced, but my top recommendations are the pappardelle and duck ragu and anything covered in their succulent truffle cream sauce. Next up, Zeb. The food at Zeb is splendid. A little joint in the Oltrarno run by a mother-son team. The son is admittedly a bit surly, but the food is ridiculous. I love all the ravioli. The meatballs are so packed with flavor they don't even need a sauce, and the beef stuffed with carrots and celery is succulent, savory, and beyond tender. Next, Trattoria Cibreo. The flan with a meat ragu and sharp Parmesan cheese was one of the more surprising and delicious things I've eaten anywhere, and the stuffed rabbit in the savory sauce was umami, tender, and full of flavor. Moving across the river to my beloved Oltrarno area, Osteria Santo Spirito serves up some of the freshest pasta I had in the city, and their sizzling gnocchi is a cheesy revelation. And my final two restaurants, a couple of spots with very similar names, Trattoria Giovanni and Osteria Giovanni. Some of the best food you can get in Florence is at Osteria Giovanni, not to be confused with the aforementioned Trattoria Giovanni. Trattoria, Osteria. Completely different things that both mean restaurant. Anyway, the homemade peachy with sausage and kale ragu is one of the best plates of pasta I've ever eaten, and the roasted meat dishes here are truly, truly special. It's not the cheapest meal in town, but it's totally worth it, and it's a perfect place for a date. I personally had a very romantic evening with myself. That sounded different in my head. Next, the lovely little Trattoria Giovanni located in the Oltrarno. Everything I've had here is delectable and quite affordable. My favorite dishes were the homemade pappardelle with rich beef ragu, the unbelievable peachy, and the beef stew is tender, rich, savory, and it's just so good. Order it. Also, the owner, Darko, is one of the friendliest guys I've met in my travels. A note on pretty much all of these restaurants, they have a midday close from about 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and if they accept reservations, it's always a good idea. And last, but certainly not least, gelato, which almost deserves a video of its own. You should enjoy it before lunch, before dinner, after dinner, after dinner. Now, this city is full of excellent gelato, but my favorite spots are Venchi, which admittedly is a bit of a tourist chain replete with a chocolate waterfall, but their gelato is legit. Vivoli, said to be the oldest gelateria in Florence. I also love the very popular Gelateria La Carraiaa. And finally, in my humble opinion, the two best gelaterias in the city, Gelateria dei Neri and Perché No. Gelateria dei Neri has some of the creamiest, most perfect gelato in Italy. My favorite flavors here are the Buontalenti with mascarpone, which is similar to a sweet cream and unique to Florence, and the Amarena with delicious black cherries. And finally, we hit Perché No. In a little side street near the Duomo lies my favorite gelateria in Florence. All the flavors here are sensational, but my favorites are the crema and the stracciatella. So simple, so creamy, so ridiculously perfect. Plus, Mari and Sergio are some of the warmest people you'll ever meet. And really, there are dozens of gelaterias I could have included here, but a basic rule of thumb, avoid gelato that is piled high in giant decorative mounds. They may look appetizing, but they're kind of crap. It usually just indicates that there's too much air in the gelato and they use fake ingredients to add color. And no disrespect to these places, I get they're just trying to run a business, but they're doing a disservice to the artisanal gelato places that put the time and energy into getting it right. So, I guess a little disrespect. Tip number 6, hit up Florence's terrific markets. Let's start with Mercato Centrale, one of my most loved markets in Europe. Downstairs, you can shop for crafts, fresh produce and meats, while upstairs, they have a newer food court, which is one of the best places to grab some phenomenal and casual local grub. Next, Mercato di San Lorenzo, a great place to buy affordable leather goods, like gloves, bags, probably some whips if you're into that sort of thing, and great affordable leather jackets. It's also just a fun place to stroll and check out the many stalls. Another much smaller but super charming market is the Loggia del Mercato Nuovo, housed underneath a stunning 16th century arched lodge. And finally, the Sant'Ambrogio Market. More of a local spot, here you can get some of the best produce you can find in Florence. Come here for fresh fruit, veggies, pasta, whatever you can think of. This would be a great place to come if you're staying in a condo with a kitchen and decide you want to save a little money and cook for yourself one night. Tip number 7, see Michelangelo's masterpiece, David. Located in the Accademia Gallery stands one of the grandest and most perfect examples of Renaissance art in the world. Is it one of the most visited tourist sites in all of Italy? Yes. Is there a reason for that? Yes. To stare up at the David is to lose yourself in something grander and greater than you can even imagine. Words, video, and photos simply do not do this precious piece of art and history justice. If you visit no other museum, see no other piece of art, which would be near impossible because there are statues literally everywhere, you must see the David. It's that special. And as I said before, the lines can be ridiculous, so make sure to book your ticket for a reserved entrance time online a good while in advance. Tip number 8, let's hit up some of the other places to sop up some of these centuries of astonishing history Florence has to offer. The most famous of these is without a doubt the Uffizi Gallery, filled with countless priceless pieces of art from Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo, basically all the Ninja Turtles. There are also incredible works by Caravaggio, Botticelli, and countless others. And the museum itself offers some wonderful views of the Ponte Vecchio and the Arno River. And generally speaking, I'm not a fan of guided tours, but this museum has thousands of pieces of art and you could easily get lost for an entire day in here. So a tour will help you a lot. If you do join a tour, you also get to skip the main line. I went with a tour from Art Viva and it was excellent and so informative. Also, make sure to visit the Palazzo Vecchio or Old Palace, which grandly frames the Piazza della Signoria. Built in the early 14th century, the ceiling alone of the Hall of 500 is one of the most impressive things you can see in Florence. And you absolutely must hike to the top of the tower for some utterly stunning views of the city. Another famous landmark not to be missed, while you're wandering around the Oltrarno, make sure to check out the Palazzo Pitti. Once the residence of the Medicis, visit the museum inside or just stare up and marvel at the amazing architecture. Tip number 9, Florence is home to some of the most dazzling and beautiful churches in the world. First, of course, the Duomo, with its famous red dome rising high above the city. One of the grandest and largest domes ever built. Make sure to climb to the top for incredible views.
I'm not breathing heavily. You're breathing heavily. Okay, I'm breathing heavily.
The main part of the church doesn't allow reservations and it's free, so you'll just have to wait, but that line does move relatively quickly. Once inside the church, make sure to head down to the crypt to see the foundations of the original church built in antiquity, and right next to the Duomo, visit the beautiful Baptistry, one of the oldest buildings in Florence. Another dramatic fixture of the Duomo complex is Giotto's bell tower. When you buy your Duomo ticket online, it also comes with the option to climb the bell tower. But once you get to the top, you're basically just standing inside of a cage. You really can get much better views of the Duomo from the aforementioned Palazzo Vecchio without having to wait nearly as long in line. Next church, the Basilica of Santa Croce. This is, for me, the most astounding church in Florence. The burial site of so many famous Italians, from Michelangelo to Gallileo to Rossini. Walk around this beautiful structure and literally step over the resting places of countless famous old Italians. Finally, don't miss the Medici Chapel, whose interior, while currently under construction, is still undeniably beautiful and full of some wonderful sculptures from famous artists including Michelangelo. Tip number 10, explore some of Florence's greener spots. First, the beautiful and impressive Boboli Gardens, a 45,000 square meter park. Stroll its many pathways, sit and relax by the gorgeous pond, take in the many statues, or just sit on the top of the hill and stare out at the beautiful city below. Next, my absolute favorite park in the city, Giardino Bardini. This place is beyond beautiful. Walk up the trail to the top of the hill to be greeted by gardens, waterfalls, a walkway with hanging wisteria that I can still smell now, and some of the most spectacular views of the city. And finally, rent a bike and ride around the hills above Florence on the south side of the river. Start at the Ponte alla Grazia bridge and head up the hill above Piazzale Michelangelo. Along the way, you'll see views of the Tuscan countryside, vistas of the city below, and the hills are dotted with many little charming parks. And speaking of views, tip number 11, hike to the top of Piazzale Michelangelo for some of the absolute best views of the city. And if you've had enough of gazing at Florence, take a stroll through the truly wonderful and peaceful adjacent Rose Garden. Another great way to see the city is on one of the many rooftop bars. If you're not staying in a hotel with its own rooftop bar, I recommend heading to the top of the Rinascente, which is basically just a department store, but head to the 4th floor, walk up the green stairs to be greeted by one of the best spots to have a drink in the city. Another awesome spot, particularly at sunset, is the top of the Westin Excelsior right on the River Arno. For 25 euros, you get a drink, an all-you-can-eat buffet of delicious snacks, and one of the best views of this magnificent city and the River Arno. And lastly, my favorite place to watch the sunset is to simply stand on the St. Trinity Bridge, stare out at the river, and let the orange glow wash over you. Tip number 12, if you have more than a few days, take a day trip outside the city to explore some of the many splendid escapes just an hour or so away. First, visit the rolling hills of Chianti and experience the insane beauty that is the Tuscan countryside. Go on a wine tasting tour, drink far too much wine, stroll the vineyards, and contemplate never going back home. I went with the small group tour by Prestige Rent, and it was fantastic. Plus, with a tour, you don't have to worry about a designated driver. Next, visit the stunning town of Siena. One of my favorite little cities on the planet, Siena is a mythical spot. Walk its medieval streets, visit the striking main Piazza del Campo, shop at its charming little market stalls, or sit back and relax in the square, just like people have been doing since the Middle Ages. And very near Siena is another must-hit spot, San Gimignano, a fascinating 13th century walled city. Wander its ancient walkways, shop in its many delightful kitschy shops, and take a stroll far back in time. Note, for Siena, I recommend taking the bus instead of the train because it drops you off much closer to the city center. But if you feel comfortable, I recommend renting a car to give you the freedom to explore the area as you see fit. Another popular day trip, you can visit Pisa to get this requisite Italian vacation photo. Something I have totally done. That is definitely not photoshopped. Okay, it's been slightly altered. Also, Lucca is another wonderful and oft overlooked Tuscan city. And lastly, basically my personal travel motto, just walk this magnificent city and get lost in its many alleys, streets, and piazzas. Florence is a wonder. Everywhere you walk, you are surrounded by something delightful, something beautiful, something ancient. Also, the people of the city are some of the warmest, friendliest, and most fun-loving people I've met anywhere in my travels. As author Jennifer Coburn said, visiting Florence is like attending a surprise party every day. So go ahead, wander, explore, allow yourself to be surprised, and lose yourself in the magic of Firenze. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to gently caress that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming videos. And like I say with all my videos, if I left off your favorite spot, please throw it in the comment section below. I always love to hear what you have to say. I've also included a comprehensive list of all the things covered in this video below and some things that I didn't have time to fit in. One huge final thank you to Audrey Kennedy for her help with this video. Thanks so much. I'll see you soon from somewhere else in the world.